Good afternoon, dear students. In today's lecture, we'll study about residential status and incidence of tax. The tax incidence on the assessee depends on the residential status. What residential status they are having, based on their citizenship, based on their nationality, the tax incidence will be there. If he is an Indian resident, the tax liability is different. If he is not ordinarily resident, tax liability is different. If he is a non-resident, tax liability is different. If you see the concept of residential status, it is said in section 6, which deals with the residential status of the assessee. One has to keep in mind the following norms while deciding the residential status of the assessee. So, what are those norms? If you see the different taxable entities, there are different persons who are liable to pay the tax. Those are called as different taxable entities. Like individual is there, Hindu undivided family is there, a firm or association of a person is there, a company is there, or any other person are there which are amounted as a person. Now these all people are liable to pay tax. Now when we see these all people are liable to pay the tax, these all institution people, all of them, they are liable to pay a tax. Now on the basis of this, they are classified whether they are resident Indian or they are non-resident Indian. We have to classify whether they are resident Indian, and whether if they are resident Indian, the tax liability we have to calculate. Similarly, if they are not non-resident Indian, the tax liability we have to calculate. A resident individual or a resident Hindu undivided family, a resident Hindu undivided family or a resident individual can be either a resident and non ordinarily resident, but not ordinarily resident in India. He can be of two types. First is resident and ordinarily resident in India, and second is resident but not ordinarily resident in India. So either he can be any of this, right? That person will be treated as a resident. Therefore, a resident individual or a resident Hindu undivided family can be either divided in three types. You can divide on the basis of this rule, which has been said in section 6 of Indian Income Tax Act of 1961, three kinds of resident. First is resident and ordinarily resident in India. Second is resident but not ordinarily resident in India. Third is non-resident. Okay, so these are the three types of resident individual or resident Hindu undivided family, which have been classified as per section 6 of Indian Income Tax Act of 1961. All other assessees like firm, association of a person, company, every other person can be either classified into these types. First is resident India and second is non-resident India, just now what we have seen. Resident India status of individual or Hindu undivided family is of two types, right? So first is resident, second is non-resident, and resident is again subdivided into two types: resident and ordinarily resident, resident but not ordinarily resident. So residential status for each previous year may change based on the number of days he is staying in India. The different residential status for different assessment year will happen, right? Let us take in 2009 and 10 and 11. In the various previous year, he was not non-resident. But now currently, if he is staying in India for the rules which have been said in income tax, then his residential status will change. He will become either resident, ordinarily resident, or he will become resident but not ordinarily resident. So a resident in India and abroad will be found based on the country in which he is staying in the assessment year by calculating the number of days. So a person may be a resident in two or more countries at the same time. It can happen. He can be a resident at the country in two or more times, right? Like if he is a resident in India, it can happen that he can even be a resident in some other country based on their rules and regulation. So there can be example of a person being non-resident in India as well as non-resident in some other country. Maybe he's traveling a lot in many more countries. So when he's not staying for more number of days in any country, so a chance will happen that he can become a non-resident Indian as well as non-resident in any other country also. So a resident status of an individual, which we have seen, is classified or is said in Section 6 of Indian Income Tax Act. Resident are of three types. Let us see the first type, resident and ordinarily resident, which is said in Section 6, subsection 1. In order to find out whether an individual is resident and ordinarily resident in India, one has to proceed as the following. First, what we should do, first find out whether such individual is a resident in India or not. The first job what we have to do is we need to find out whether that individual is resident Indian or not. This is the first job we have to do. Second is, if such individual is resident in India, then find out whether he is ordinarily resident in India or not ordinarily resident in India. The next job what we have to do is we have to find out whether he is ordinarily resident in India or he is not ordinarily resident in India. That is the second thing we have to find out, second step. The third step is, if such individual is a non-resident in India, then no further action is necessary, right? If that particular assessee is non-resident, then no further more action is required, right? So maybe he is resident in some other country, there he will be doing his financial transaction, and there the tax and other matters will be paid. So the basic conditions to test as to when an individual is resident in India or not, which is said in Section 6, subsection 1 of Indian Income Tax Act of 1961. He is in India in the previous year for a period of 182 days or more. The first basic condition is that he should stay in India for a period of 182 days or more in the previous year, right? Like out of 365 days in the year, previous year, he should stay in India for more than 182 days, or he is in India for a period of 60 days or more during the previous year, and 365 days or more during immediate preceding the previous year. If suppose first condition in the basic condition is not satisfied, then we have to check the second basic condition. That is, he is in India for a period of 60 days in the previous year or more than 60 days in the previous year, and he was there in India for a period of 365 days or more during the 4 preceding previous years, right? If this condition is also satisfied, either of the one, right? These two conditions are there, he has to satisfy any one condition. Satisfying both the condition is not required. Only one condition is also satisfied, that means his basic condition is fulfilled, either one first condition or second condition. So he has to satisfy one condition. The second condition is relaxed in some cases. In those cases, an individual need to be present in India for a minimum of 182 days or more in order to become a resident in India instead of 60 days in the following circumstances. In some circumstances, where we call as some exceptional cases, the second condition's relaxation has been given, right? What are those conditions, or what are those exceptional cases where second condition relaxation has been given? First is, an Indian citizen lives in India. If an Indian citizen who is Indian, has Indian nationality plus Indian resident and Indian citizen who is living in India during the previous year for the purpose of taking up employment outside India. If he is going outside India for the purpose of taking employment outside India to some foreign countries, then the period of 60 days in the second condition, right? In the second condition, basic condition, will extend to 182 days. Similarly, an Indian citizen leaves India during the previous year as the member of a crew of Indian ship, right? When he is going to some foreign country as a member of a crew to a ship with a proper all documentation, then the number of days, 60 days, will get extended. The 60 days will get extended to again 182 days. So as a general, there are two conditions, basic condition. First is that he should stay in India, first condition, for more than 182 days in the previous year. And second basic condition is that he should stay in India for 60 days or more in the previous year, and 365 days or more during 4 preceding previous year. So out of these two basic condition, He has to satisfy any one of the basic condition, right? Any one of the basic conditions. Now, and the third exception, an Indian citizen or a person of Indian origin comes on a visit to India during the previous year for the purpose. A person is said to be an Indian origin if either he or any of his parents or his grandparents was born in undivided India. If any Indian origin person who is staying outside India in the foreign countries who comes to visit to India, right, during the previous year, in that case also the period of 60 days will get extended to 182 days, right? So these are the basic conditions, with exemption or exceptional cases where the second conditions 60 days will get extended to 182 days. Now what are the additional condition or subsequent condition? The additional condition is to test when a residential individual is ordinarily resident in India or not. So, as per section 6, subsection 6 of Indian Income Tax Act, resident individual is treated as resident and ordinarily resident in India if he satisfies the following two additional conditions. So what are those? First is he has been resident in India in at least 2 out of 10 previous years according to the basic condition noted above immediately preceding the relevant previous year. So he should be in India, or he should be resident in India out of 2 in 10 previous years. There are 10 previous year if you have to count. From 2019 and 20, if you count 10 previous year, out of 10 previous year, he should be a resident Indian in any 2 years, in any 2 previous year. So that means he has satisfied the first subsequent condition. Second subsequent condition is that he has been in India for a period of 730 days or more during 7 previous year immediately preceding the relevant previous years. So the second subsequent condition is he should be there in India for 730 days or more during the 7 immediate preceding previous years. So he has to satisfy both the subsequent condition. In brief, it can be said that an individual becomes resident and ordinarily resident in India, right? He can become a resident or ordinarily resident in India if he satisfies at least one of the basic condition and he satisfies both the subsequent condition. Then that person who satisfies one basic condition and both the subsequent condition or both the additional condition, then we call such assessee as resident Indian. We call such assessee as resident Indian. Now, if he satisfies at least one basic condition but none of the additional condition, right? He satisfies one of the basic condition but he doesn't satisfy any of the basic condition, any of the subsequent condition, then such person is resident and not ordinarily resident, right? Resident we call him, but he is not ordinarily resident. But if he satisfies any of the basic condition but he does not satisfy any of the additional condition or a subsequent condition, then he will be treated as non-resident, right? Non-resident. So in summary, if I can tell this, is if both the basic condition not satisfied, if you don't satisfy both the basic conditions, then that assessee will be called as non-resident, right? Then additional conditions are not relevant. Then if any of the basic conditions satisfied, then further to see if both the additional conditions are satisfied, means any one basic condition is satisfied and both the additional conditions are also satisfied. In that case, the assessee will be called as resident. Third, if both the conditions both basic conditions are satisfied, then even if one and additional conditions not satisfied, right? Even if one additional condition is also not satisfied, right? Then that person is called as not ordinarily resident. To become a resident, remember that you have to satisfy one basic condition, at least minimum one basic condition, and both the subsequent condition. So you will be called as resident, right? If you satisfy both the basic condition and if you fail to satisfy any of the subsequent condition, or if you don't satisfy any one subsequent condition also, right, or you are left out, in that case you will be called as not ordinarily resident. Non-resident is a person who is not satisfying any basic condition at all, right? So remaining thing we'll see in the next video. Thank you.